Chairperson Welch is absent today, so I'm going to be, at least at the beginning, presiding. So let's have the roll call, please.
Commissioner Story?
Here.
Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Commissioner Newman?
Here. Okay, then Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I have here the Capitola's version of the, what do you call it, where you, no.
The disclaimer?
Yeah, this meeting is cablecast live on Charter Communications, Cable TV Channel 8, and AT&T UVerse Channel 99, and is being recorded to be replayed on the following Monday and Friday at 1 p.m. on Charter Channel 71 and Comcast Channel 25. Meetings can also be viewed from the city's website, www.cityofcapitola.org. Our technician tonight is Scott Gray. Please turn off your cell phones, and if you're going to speak, please sign in at the sheet so we can get your name into the minutes. Okay, so the next order of business is to swear in our new planning commissioner.
Let's come down here.
I, Sam Story,
Do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservations or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservations or purposes of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties upon which
discharge the duties upon which
I am about to enter.
I am about to enter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Yeah.
And we welcome the new commissioner. Happy to have you.
And, thank you, everyone. Thanks for having me here. I want to thank the staff for your assistance in getting me to this point. I look forward to working with everyone, the other commissioners, and I want to thank Councilmember Kristen Peterson for appointing me. Thank you.
Okay. So the next order of business is to elect the chair and vice chair for 2017. Do we have any nominations?
Yeah, if there's no discussion, I'd like to nominate Ed Newman for chair and Susan Westman for vice chair.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Then next, commission appointments for 2017. We have two that need to be filled, the Art and Cultural Commission and the Traffic and Parking Commission. The commissioners who sat on those commissions last year are both willing to do so again. Commissioner Smith on the Art and Cultural Commission and Commissioner Welsh on the Traffic and Parking Commission. So
I would like to offer the opportunity, Sam, if you would like to sit on the Art and Cultural Commission, I'd be more than happy to step aside.
Oh, well, I'm happy to consider it. Maybe I could get more information about the Art and Cultural Commission, just the logistics, when it meets, how frequently, and if we may, I mean, I would certainly like to consider that, Linda, and possibly we could do it at a future meeting.
why don't we defer this to the February 3rd meeting then?
I think that's fine.
So you guys can decide.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
All right. So tonight, initially, we have a presentation from the Soquel Creek Water District. Thank you.
Hi, Commissioners. Thank you, staff, for inviting us here tonight. I'm Ron Duncan. I'm the General Manager with Soquel Creek Water District, and fortunate to have Carla Christensen, one of our board members, with us tonight. So I just want to start off with, well, congratulations, Mr. Story, for being appointed to this position. Thank you all for your service. We appreciate it, being in government agency. We know how important it is. And I just want to point out to staff the work that Rich does with us, because we're often involved with development and planning by providing water, and Katie, and even Jamie. They're his help. No, we love Jamie. So that's been good. What we want to talk to you about is water. I think it's a topic that's important to both of us, or both agencies, and the whole community. We got a handout here. I'll hand this to you. I don't want it to get lost, but it'll be a good guide as we run through a talk. We have about 10 minutes, and then we hope to spur some questions. Y'all like them? Sure. Not if we didn't want to share this, if we really love.
If you're going to use this in your presentation, is there any way to put it up on the screen?
I didn't bring PowerPoint tonight. Trying a different approach here, just to, I actually thought you were going to be in the other room and just try to make it a little bit less formal. But what we want to start off with is we want to talk about the problem just for a minute or two. I think a lot of people are familiar with the water shortage problem we have, and then potential solutions. And really what we're asking for at the end is, if this is something that resonates with you, especially the solutions and that sort of thing, that maybe direct staff at another meeting or whatever to the full board or the full council to consider it as an item to hear again, because they have heard it. But what we are starting to ask is, would councils and commissions want to formally show a support through maybe a resolution for the further evaluation of these projects that we're considering. Not the projects themselves, but further evaluation. So that's kind of the punchline at the end, the request. But, it's been raining. Our water problems are over, right? No, far from that. A lot of us think that because in the city of Santa Cruz, when it does rain, they're much better off. When it doesn't rain, their streams go dry. They rely on surface water, the San Lorenzo River and other streams. So when it rains, they've got plenty of water. When it doesn't rain, they're short. It's different from 41st Avenue all the way down through the rest of the county. We rely on underground aquifers. And those aquifers in this area, and it's even worse as you get further south, have been overdrafted since 1980. More water has been pulled out than replenished by the rain since 1980. If you think of it as a bank account, we've been pulling more money out of our bank account than we've been putting in since the 1980s, and that can only go on so long before you break the bank, so to speak. So it's become a serious situation, but it's not just the overdraft. If we had a bathtub and it was draining faster than we were filling it, it'd eventually just go dry, and maybe you could sit and wait till you fill it back up. But we got a special situation here. Because we're next to the ocean, the aquifers underneath the ground lead out into the ocean. So when we lower the water level in the aquifers inland and the ocean's out here, we don't even have to get below sea level. When we even get close to it, the water in the ocean starts coming in and contaminates our aquifers. We have that occurring now in the southern one-third from La Selva Beach all the way up to about Aptos, and then at Pleasure Point we have seawater intrusion in there. We have it many times the allowable concentration limit. If you go further south, in Pajaro, it's in 3 miles. If you go down to Monterey, it's in all the way to Highway 101. So this is not a figment of our imagination. It's real. Matter of fact, it's happening in most populated coastal regions of the world that have pumped groundwater near the ocean. And it ruins your aquifer for generation after generation after generation after generation. It's gone. You've ruined the asset that you have. I'll show you a bottle of water. That's the second one we'll show you.
Yeah, I'd like to point out that what's happened in Pajaro and those areas south to Monterey, that is what everyone is afraid is going to happen to our own water district, because it's a sandy soil, been overpumped for even longer than SoCal Water District's aquifer. Mm-hmm. And they are now looking at desal plants. They already have pump-in tertiary treated water to, you've probably seen the fields out there that have purple piping. That is the tertiary treated water that is used for even organic farming. I mean, but that's what they have to water with. They cannot pump any more water out of the ground. They're under a mandatory, what do you call that? Mandatory management, I guess, federal management of their lands because of that overdraft.
Yeah. Ms.
Trying to avoid that.
Yeah, Director Christensen's right. They've had to abandon using those wells along the coast, and they've had to they're treating water to what's called tertiary standards. They can irrigate crops with it and that sort of thing. So again, they've lost that. Talking about the problem, though, along the coast, we took this sample about a month ago, 12/13/2016. It's a sample down right in Aptos from one of our monitoring wells, and it has 18,000 milligrams per liter of salt in it. The ocean is 36,000, or even a little less than that. So this is more than halfway to salt, taken out of our monitoring well along the coast. So it's in there. This is a real sample right here, taken less than a month ago. We like to demonstrate that because the problem's there. It's happening. So I think we all know we have a substantial problem. Another way to visualize this, to solve it, we'd have to reduce our pumping 1/3 the amount we're pumping right now for 20 years in order to heal the basin. Another way to look at it is we could stop pumping altogether for 8 years and then let it heal and not serve any water. So that shows you the severity of the situation. So what are we doing about it? We've created what we call our community water plan. This pamphlet that I provided you is online, and it's available to anybody. They can go to our website, www.soquelcreekwater.org, go under our water, and there's several things. But what, in essence, this is it describes kind of our roadmap to the future for sustainable, reliable water supply. And it really focuses on our key project, which is Pure Water Soquel that we've launched an EIR on. But before you get too engrossed, let me back up and tell you there are 5 components to the community water plan. And it's called the community water plan because we engaged the community. We took a 13-month process to look at all potential projects out there, stormwater recharge, working water from Santa Cruz, desalinization, all sorts of projects. And we had the community chime in. One of your city council members, I remember, actually attended a couple of those workshops. But we derived a plan that consists of about 4 different elements. One is conservation. That's the backbone of any good water plan. And your community, Capitola, they're water stars. They're using about 1/3, and so is all of Soquel Creek Water District customers, about 1/3 of what the state averages in water. We're using about 50 gallons per day per person. May sound like a lot, but 14 years ago, we were using about twice that much per person. So done an outstanding job, and thank you for that. So conservation's the kind of the backbone, the fundamental layer that's gotten us to where we are. We look at that as our insurance policy because we're just staving off seawater intrusion, and we don't know for how much longer until we get a supplemental supply. But we also manage our wells. We've got about 17 water wells from here down to La Selva Beach, and we optimize how we pump, so we minimize the amount of seawater intrusion we're pulling in, and we also move the wells inland. The further you get from the coast, the less draw you have on the ocean. So conservation and optimization of the well pumping, but that's only going to get us so far. That's not going to solve the problem. So what we've done is we created workshops and that sort of thing, evaluated a bunch of different options, supplemental supply options, and in this community water plan, we have 3 options that we're considering. And we're trying to keep these 3 options on the table as long as possible. That's just our fundamental strategy because it's a difficult environment for various reasons to actually secure a water supply. Those 3 options, the first being the least, is literally and figuratively a long shot. It's desal water from down in the Monterey area. If they actually get a desal plant, not the Cal-Am, but there's 2 other plants that are being considered, we may run a pipeline all the way down there and pipe the water up. We don't know if that'll happen. It's one of the more expensive options, but nothing's more expensive than seawater intrusion. Nothing. The second option is we actually look the other way. We look to Santa Cruz, and we feel hopeful about that. We actually have a small contract with them right now to obtain a little bit of water that's not prevented by water law. Most of their water they can't send us because it's prevented by state law. But we're working with them on a larger exchange, and we do hope to get a significant amount of water. They're several years out, and they're working on their plan. They'll actually be presenting where they're at here the third Tuesday of the month in February in this forum right here as part of our own board meeting. So we're hopeful about that, but we don't have that much control over that. So what the analysis indicated was the best option for us that had under our most control is taking either raw sewage water or secondary water that goes out to the ocean now, on average 8 million gallons a day of water, our effluent, the stuff we flush down the toilets, goes out to the ocean right now, and it's of no use. It's not being used, put to use. So we're looking at either taking primary sewage or that secondary treated or tertiary treated water and purifying it. But what we're really focusing on is that water that they're treating down there at Santa Cruz, our own effluent, that gets pumped through all the way. Everything from the whole county gets pumped through here down to Neary Lagoon and treated. And there is some legislation to say they may have to limit throughout the state how much, if you're sending effluent out to the ocean. Senator Hertzberg down in the L.A. area has promulgated some legislation that is being considered. So they have some motivation. What we want to do is take that secondary effluent, ship it back to us, purify it, and when I say purify, I mean make it cleaner than our current water or any water in this currently served in this community. We have analysis that show the level of purification. We want to take that water once we purify it, and then we want to send it out into about 4 locations and recharge through wells, recharge the aquifer. And what that does is it creates a seawater barrier to prevent further seawater intrusion and provides us additional water. Down in Orange County, they've been doing this for 45 years, and they've successfully created a seawater barrier and added to their water. We were down there. I think our whole board went down there. And one of the anecdotal stories was that they actually, where they put these recharge wells, Irvine Ranch and other entities asked for those wells to be located near where they are because the water is of higher quality than the existing water they pump. And that certainly would be the case with us. Our groundwater is good, but it does have arsenic, chromium, and other things we have to try mitigate for. So that's the project in a nutshell. If we get secondary effluent, if we get primary, we have to add another level of treatment before that. Here's what secondary water looks like. And if anybody, I show this because, where we're going to have a plant, people are often concerned. Is it going to smell? Is there going to be noise and everything? And if you get secondary effluent, the word we hear most often to describe this is pond water or our own water that we currently serve. Has virtually no odor to it. Would anybody care to just take a...
No. It's honestly, this is legal to discharge into the ocean at the moment.
It is legal. It's treated to secondary standards, Title 22. Again, what we hope and what Public Works of Santa Cruz is working with us too, we're working on a contract to get that secondary effluent. They want to treat it to tertiary standards, take it up one more notch. That way, when they send it back to us, we can irrigate along the way with it. Tertiary is what you can use to put on playing fields or water organic crops with, or conventional crops. Let me tell you, though, that this water, or even tertiary treated water, we're talking much cleaner when we talk purified. It's orders and orders of magnitude cleaner. So, like I said, cleaner than the water that we currently serve. So that's our plan in a nutshell. If you want to hear about costs, be glad to talk about that. If we get secondary or tertiary water from the city of Santa Cruz, it's about a $55 million project. If we have to take primary, it's about $15 million more. We currently launched an EIR. We finished the scoping comment period on that. We received, I think, about 170 comments. We're very proud of that because we sent out over 6,000 postcards to people urging them to recognize what we're doing and be involved. We had a nice meeting last night with neighbors that would be potentially located right around the facility if it's where it's currently located. It was a very positive They said they're not very excited about having a primary treatment plant there, but if they had secondary or tertiary, they could work with us on that. That was the indication that we heard. So, and we understand that. We've invited them in to co-create a vision of what that plant may look like. So we're at the beginning of an EIR, Environmental Impact Report. We will release the draft midsummer, and then at the beginning of the year, 2018, we'll be out final for board consideration for adoption. So you've heard the community water plan, in particular, conservation, optimization of the wells, well management, and then these three options we're considering. And we think it might be a combination of Pure Water Soquel and maybe some water from the city of Santa Cruz when you ultimately look at it. But that's the elements of a plan. Like I said, we're working hard on it. And what we're asking is if this is something of interest, and I think it is with any community, because you know how short we are of water, and it's vital to a vibrant town such as Capitola, that you consider agendizing, bringing us back for potentially saying, hey, we believe in this, it sounds good. We can't commit because the EIR hasn't been done, further analysis, but we believe in further evaluation, basically with the aim to obtain a sustainable, reliable water supply. And we'd love to hear questions.
Any commissioners? Commissioner Story.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I was a little unclear about the EIR as it relates to the three recharge options. Is the EIR looking at all those, or are you trying to narrow and focus? And I was wondering what the timeline is for making that ultimate final decision.
Great question. Thank you for that. Can I take a shot at that?
Yeah.
Okay. So remember, the other two projects are under our control. So the one down in Monterey area is Deepwater Desal. They've launched their own EIR. We've signed our board has signed a letter of interest. The commitment we gave was $10,000, so they would include in their EIR the pipeline from here to there. So that's underway. I don't want to put any time frames on their project, but they started before us, so they should be a little further along, but it's complicated. The city of Santa Cruz, they took about 2 years to evaluate their project, so obtaining water from them, they're still in the evaluation mode of several different options for them, so they haven't entered an EIR. So what I was talking about is just for the Pure Water Soquel project. Just launched midsummer, late summer, draft EIR come out, receive more comments, input from the community, and then in the early beginning of the new year, the final. And I will say, Tuesday night our board adopted some guiding principles about the project, and it was to make a concerted effort to obtain the tertiary or secondary water that's going out to the city of Santa Cruz. And, we all pay for that. I think everybody pays about $550 a year on your home taxes or in some form if you rent, maybe through your rent money. But they realize that is it helps limit the discharge more, and it's a less costly option. It's more favorable to the community where the site would potentially be located, or any site probably, because there is no odor with that. So that's where we stand.
I mean, the emphasis also is that the recycled water project, we're primarily interested in that because it is drought independent. The water exchanges, the water transfers with Santa Cruz City are dependent, and so far, like for example, last year, it was really only at the very end of the rainy season that they were even able to think about providing water or selling us this small amount of water. They couldn't do it until their reservoir was a certain level.
Right.
And so the recycled water is an attempt to create a lower cost, independent water supply. And the recharge wells refer only to the recycled water project. You don't need to recharge desal water, but you do have to. The current laws regulate indirect potable reuse, so they permit it as long as the water has resided in the ground for.
Yeah,
What,
they
6
allow,
months
they
or
allow
2 months?
the law since 2014 has allowed this, and actually what we're talking about, actually the legislator has been given a document by the scientific community to allow the purified water to go directly into the water pipes. And there's about, we're not proposing that, But in this range of projects, from what we're doing to just putting it right in the pipe, into the tap, there's 26 projects being evaluated in the state of California. There's 8 actively already going. We have Silicon Valley, Pure Water Silicon Valley, that's been doing it for a couple of years. Pure Water Monterey is through the EIR. They've conducted 30% construction, so they're going along. And there's many others. San Diego, the whole board will be touring in March. They have one where they're purifying the water and sticking it in their reservoir, and they hope to supply a significant amount of water. So this is not new. It's just now people are realizing this is a constant resource. It's not a waste. We shouldn't look at it as a wastewater that's gone in the ocean. We're quite proud of that we can take that water, purify it, and put it to beneficial use. And as Director Christensen said, it's a constant affluent going out there right now, where stream water is a little bit hit or miss. Although we believe that there's something to offer there too.
Yeah, I'll just make one comment. I've been following this as a customer of the district. I've been following this effort for quite some time, and I think you're going in the right direction.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Appreciate
So,
that.
first of all, appreciate all the information. In terms of some kind of support or endorsement, it might be more of a city council
Yeah, I'm suggesting the
decision
city
than a planning
council.
commission. We more react to applications. And then I do have another comment, and don't take this as in any way a criticism of the direction you're going, which I think is good. But how long have you been with the district?
I've been there about 15 years.
Okay,
I've been in water all my life.
So I built a house in the Soquel Hills in 1981. That's, 36 years ago? And at that time, the issue of saltwater intrusion was a big topic 36 years ago. And in fact, there was a controversy over whether or not a moratorium on further permits should be issued at that time, and there was lots of data and so forth. And so this, the world didn't collapse in the last 36 years. So it's not a new problem. It's nice to see some new proactive solutions to it. It probably has gotten a little bit worse, but I don't know that. At that time, the numbers I thought were very, I'll use the term confusing as a benign term.
You know, I think that's why it's happened in 7 out of the 10 populated coastal regions of the world that use groundwater, because it is easy to dismiss. You know, you go, well, it's moving slow.
turn the water on.
It's underground. You know, look at Pajaro. It's moving literally about that much every day. Boom, boom. It's been going on since the 50s, and that's why it's 3 miles inland. That's why it is such a hard thing to stop. And it is confusing. It's complex because you have to use, we're developing a numerical model, a very intensive model. But, you know, what is different is we didn't have those levels in those monitoring wells back then. And again, this level right here, 18,000 milligrams per liter, halfway to seawater, over halfway to seawater. You could not survive off this. Plants would die very quickly.
Yeah. That sample that you just held up, I know you said it was taken from Aptos, but what's the distance from the ocean?
It's near the coast, right along the coast. It's actually our monitoring well, SCA3A, if you want to know. There's different layers. What we try to do is set up a Sentry alarm system along the coast, so we see it's coming. Stanford gave a presentation last night, Rosemary Knight, she's renowned in this. They did a geophysical study down the coast from Capitola, right here at the jetty, all the way down. They shot what's called a geophysical. They shot electrical current down 1,000 feet into the sand, all from here, and marched down. Every 100 yards, they set up a probe. And you can see the red. From Monterey, it's all red. Red indicating seawater intrusion, like I said, 7, 10 miles inland there, 3 miles in the coast, inland at Watsonville, and now hitting the tip of our area down south. What's really scaring us is it's showing up in Pleasure Point. So now we're literally connecting the dots. And I hear you that, yeah, you've heard this for a while. But I urge us not to get complacent. Like I said, that's been the downfall of the people to the south, Florida, New York, all around the world. And when I talk 7 out of 10, I'm not talking just the United States. I'm talking around the world. So.
Okay, well, thank you very much for,
Yeah.
We'll, I guess, deal with it at a subsequent meeting. And
Yeah, we'd appreciate that. You know, just I think we have common goals and causes and supporting a vibrant community. And, you know, water's necessary, and we need your support. We can't carry this load without, you know, without the community. You just can't do it.
I'd really like to add, too, the last time the board, I wasn't on the board at the time, considered a moratorium. They had to hold it at the New Brighton Auditorium, middle school auditorium. It was overflowing. They couldn't let all those people who wanted to speak because so many people were, and it was all people who were against the very idea of not being able to develop their property. So that has been the pressure driving since 1980.
Well, a moratorium is a problem because it allocates the problem to a small number of people.
Right.
Those who don't yet have the water, they may have vacant land, but they don't have water to it, and their neighbor has water already, and so the neighbor wants.
And swimming pool, too.
Yeah.
Swimming pool to boot. I know.
So
Fair.
it's kind of an arbitrary allocation of the cost of the solution.
It's not a solution, basically. That is what is really obvious, but it's very acrimonious and divisive in a community to even have to be forced into a consideration of that kind of an adjustment. So.
I will say that it sometimes expands to the entire community like it did in Monterey when they do not allow additions or expansions. They actually got into trading a kitchen sink or something like that. So it can be more than just new development. It can be you, me, who want to remodel.
Okay.
So,
Yeah,
and we
so
don't
this
want to
is-
go there.
Yeah, this is really important to be a little more proactive than we've been able to in the past.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, well, thank you. I think
Thank you very
we'll
much.
get on with our
Appreciate
agenda
it.
here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, oral communications, any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Staff has no changes.
Okay. Next on the agenda is a time for public comment on items that are not on the agenda. Anyone want to address the commission? Seeing no one. Any commission comments on items not on the agenda? None? Staff comments?
Staff has no comments.
Nobody has any comments. Okay, so that takes us to the minutes of the December 1 meeting, and there are only two of us here who attended that meeting.
I could move approval as drafted.
Okay, and I will second. All in favor?
Aye.
I'll
Aye.
abstain.
And we have one abstention. Okay, now, next item is the consent calendar. We have one item on the consent calendar, 502 Pine Street, application number 16-212, which is a subdivision application to convert a duplex apartment into 2 residential condominiums. Is there anyone that,
I'll move the consent calendar.
I'll second that.
all in,
With a comment, just that the building department has all sorts of inspections that'll make sure that all the conditions are met at the end. And I'm good with all that.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm going to abstain, just in an excess of caution. So it passes 2-0.
2-0.
Okay, you're done.
Good luck.
Good luck. All right, that moves us to our public hearings, and the first one, which is 4530 Garnet Street. If anyone is here for that application, there's been a request to continue it to the February 2nd meeting.
I'll move to continue.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next item is 407 El Salto Drive, application 16-178. It's an application for a major revocable encroachment permit and fence permit. The staff report, please.
Good evening, Commissioners. For those of you who don't know, my name's Joanna Wilk. I've been interning here for a little while. So here we have an application for a height exception for a wall located in the unutilized portion of the public right-of-way in front of 407 El Salto Drive. And the location of the wall within the public right-of-way will require a major revocable encroachment permit. So here's a closer look at the front yard of the property. The property line is shown in blue, and there is an 8-foot unutilized public right-of-way in between the property and the street. The proposed wall encroaches 2 feet into that right-of-way and is in line with the neighboring fence at 411 El Salto Drive. And we would like to note that the applicant previously had the wall located closer to the street. However, they moved it back due to Public Works request. So this is the site plan for the wall. Highlighted in blue is the wall line. These yellow squares show the 8 pillars located throughout the wall. They are made up of stone. Highlighted in brown are 3 gates. The one on the left and the one on the right are used for driveway access, and the one in the middle is used for pedestrian access to the property. So the next few slides, you'll see the street view of the wall as well as the design details for the wall. Here's the gate on the most left-hand side. It's made up of solid wood on that bottom portion and has a wrought iron grill style on the top portion. So you'll be able to see through the top portion of that gate. Between the pillars, the wall will have 2.5 feet of decorative concrete, and that top foot will also have the wrought iron grill style. And as mentioned earlier, the applicant is requesting a height exception. So the maximum allowable height is 3.5 feet. However, all 3 gates are 4.5 feet tall, and the pillars are 4 feet tall. This is the central portion of the wall. You can see the pedestrian gate here and 2 light fixtures on top of the pillars located adjacent to that gate. And this is the driveway gate on the most right-hand side, made up of the same materials as mentioned earlier. So to issue a major revocable encroachment permit, the Planning Commission is to consider 4 points. The first point is the expense and difficulty of the removal of the wall. So as a part of the permit's approval, the applicant must agree to remove the wall when so ordered by the city and at their own expense. The second point is the size, scale, and aesthetics of the wall. The wall is of exceptional quality. It fits well into the community, and as mentioned before, it's in line with the neighboring fence at 411 El Salto. Third is the preservation of views. The proposed wall will not impact any views. And last is if the approval of the permit will grant a special privilege to the applicant and a detriment to the community. So as you may know, throughout Depot Hill, it's very common to see an unutilized public right-of-way between the property and the street frontage. So it's often that we see encroachment permits approved. So therefore, granting this encroachment permit will not be of special privilege. And in addition, the design of the wall is not a detriment to the community, and it will not affect on-street parking. So in conclusion, based on the findings and conditions, staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve the major revocable encroachment permit and fence permit with a height exception at 407 El Salto. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll open the public hearing. Is the applicant or applicant's representative present? Do you have anything you'd like to add? Okay. And seeing no one else, we'll close the public hearing and see what the commissioners have to say.
Well, I'll kick it off because I'd like to hear what you guys have to say, but I'd like to throw out some thoughts. When I first moved to Capitola, we've had several different fence applications that have come in, and one of the things that we've heard from the residents of Capitola for many years now is that we would like to maintain a community that neighbors know neighbors, and so there's a lot of pushback to have solid gates where you're gating off, one home in a neighborhood, and it sort of closes them off from being that neighborhood. So you don't walk by and see your neighbors and speak to them and talk to them and all that stuff. At the same time, there are extenuating circumstances where you have either traffic concerns or privacy concerns that have enabled us to make exceptions and allow for things to be different than our code. When I looked at this particular design, I was concerned initially that it was going to be very blocking, so that it would kind of shut off the property from the rest of the neighborhood, and you would lose that community feeling. But with the top part of it being open, I don't have as much of a problem with it. I'm reluctant to issue a height exception, though, for all of the reasons that I just stated. With the design, I'd like to hear from the other commissioners what your experience has been. And since there are no neighbors here, and it was duly noticed, and they've all heard about it.
Okay. Since there's no one else here, we'll go ahead. But please come up so people at home can hear you.
If I'm looking at my property, the neighbors to the left, the height of my fence is the same height as their fence. I don't know if they received a revocable permit, but theirs is actually full wood. So it's going to be exactly the same height as theirs.
Yeah, I did read that in the staff report as well.
If there's anything else that you want to offer, let's do it at this time, because what we don't want to get into is a back and forth every time a commissioner.
I would
that was
like
my
to
other
ask the applicant one question, and I should have asked it earlier and I didn't think of it, but I will ask, did you have any neighborhood discussions? Have you talked to your neighbors about the design of your fence
Yeah, we talked
proposal?
so we have the neighbors to our right, if I'm looking at my property, yeah, we talked about that because part of what we're doing, it's not required that we get a revocable permit for it, but we're going to build a wall in between our properties right now, and they had no problem with it.
Okay, thank you.
May I ask while
Sure.
she's there? I guess I wanted to ask the purpose of the height exception. Is it just to have this fence be in line with the neighbor's fence at
It was-
411?
Partly for that reason, but also because if we ever wanted to have an animal like a dog, we want to be able to kind of keep them in the yard rather than have them be able to just go over the fence. And also just the height exception is, I think, or not the exception, but the requirement is 2.5 feet, I believe.
3.5.
3.5.
What's that?
3.5.
3.5, which is just low, I think, for a fence.
Thank you.
I had some questions for staff on being the new person here. First, I guess on the expense and difficulty of removal, is staff aware, have we ever removed a fence that was encroaching?
You know, I imagine throughout the history of the city, we probably have, but not since I've been here. I don't think any time in recent history we haven't done that.
So it's highly unlikely that.
Yeah, especially there, I don't think we're ever going to be putting sidewalks in Depot Hill.
Concerning now the height and the drawings as they, I'm looking at the pillars, and it says it's 48 inches high, but with an 18-inch square. Does the 48 include the cap, that square cap? There, so is it the pillar and the cap is 48, or is it the pillar is 48 and the cap is 18, so that really the total is 66?
My understanding is that the cap is an 18-inch by 18-inch square on top, but I believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that the 48 inches, the 4 feet height, is to the very top of that cap.
Of the cap.
So the cap itself is 1.5 feet wide by 1.5 feet wide.
Okay, so the 18 is referring to the horizontal dimensions
Yeah.
of the cap, not the height dimensions of the cap.
Exactly.
And I guess, and the purpose of that height for the pillars or for the cap, why is that?
It was just to space it with making it 6 inches above the fence, not the fence, but the wall there, just to kind of give it a little bit of height dimensions. It was more for aesthetic reasons.
Aesthetic purposes.
Yeah.
Okay. And also, I had a question about, the gate. the height shown there is 54 inches, but that's at the top of the arc of the gate. Where the red line is drawn, so the lowest, the part of the gate next to the pillars is actually at the required height, the 3 feet 6 inches, 42 inches.
It would appear to be. However, I'm not sure if this drawing was done to scale exactly, though.
Can you repeat the question?
Okay.
So what I was asking is, on the gate, the 54 inches is at the peak of the arch of the gate.
Yes.
If you scroll back down to the edge of the gate where it meets the pillar, what's the height of the gate at that point?
It's slightly below the,
Looks like it's about 4 feet.
we haven't really figured that out. I drew this myself, so it's not really something that I've completely figured out.
Okay. I mean, according to the drawing, it looks like the gate at the edge of the pillar is at the required height. Because the pillar is 4 feet, the red line is marking at that edge of the gate as 3 feet 6 inches.
So that drawing is misleading in terms of scale. I can guarantee you, just by looking at it.
Right.
If you were to scale the 3.6 and then the extra foot, it wouldn't compute. So it's misleading. It understates the non-compliance with the height limit.
If this were exactly to scale, the cement wall portion with the grate on top, I think would be a little lower, and the 36, the 3 feet.
It makes
6
it
inch
look
height.
like there's just a teeny little
Yeah, it's
excess, where in fact there's 1 foot out of 4.5 feet that are above the inn. I think I'm getting some concurrence there. By the way, the plans, I may be the only one, but I would consider this more of a sketch that the applicant did themselves, and it was hard to follow, quite honestly. But the first slide helped a lot, showing the amount of the encroachment. It wasn't really in the plans here, but that kind of cleared it up.
Okay, I think I have enough sense of it now, but I did have one other question, though. The driveway gate, does that open in or open out?
Out.
It swings out?
Right.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
okay.
yeah, towards the property.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
So, as I say, I had trouble with the plans, but in terms of what appears to be about a 2-foot encroachment in the Depot Hill area, that's very common, and I don't think that we're ever going to enlarge those streets to the point that this would become a problem, but if it is, of course, they'll have to remove it. I agree with Commissioner Smith that the height is a concern. The policy that I think gives rise to a height limit on fences is to avoid the fortress concept in our neighborhoods. And what that means is that the people on the street, everyone who's in their house is kind of separated from the community in a fortress. And that's why we have a height limit on the gates and fences. And I haven't really heard anything here that would suggest to me why this particular fence should not comply with the code.
The only thing that I think I heard, and I think I read in the staff report as well, and when I went out and looked, the neighboring fence is at the height because of the grading and stuff. So this height is going to match that at the post level, is what I'm understanding.
Precisely.
And that's the real reason that it would make any sense to me.
How high is the neighbor's fence?
this height, 48, with an arc at the top at the same height that I'm proposing.
When was the neighbor's fence built? Oh, yeah. Hey, so let's confine it to the commission at this point, and then if we need to get, because when you engage the commission from a seat in the audience, we don't get a record, the people at home can't hear it, et cetera. So that's why we try to keep a process so that we have a public hearing and then we have the commission and so forth, okay?
Okay.
So I'm still, I guess I'd like input from the staff as to whether this would basically be saying that everybody on Depot Hill should have a 4.5-foot fence now.
I will just bring up a couple clarifying points that the point was made about the scale. And so if this fence were to be approved, staff would ensure that the portions between the columns, not the gates, but the wall portions, were at the max height of 3.5 feet, because that is what is labeled on the plans as a 30-inch wall and then a 12-inch iron on top. So that would actually proportionately be lower, because that is not exceeding the max height for a front yard fence. So it is the columns and the gates that are asking for the exception beyond the allowable front height fence. But in terms of future applications being in excess of that, that is not how the code is set up, and the future code is mirroring today's code of a maximum of 3.5 feet in the front yard.
So the plans, I'll go back to my difficulty with the plans. I'm looking, and it is a sketch, and I understand that it's expensive to have architect draw and so forth, but so I've got a pillar here that's 48 inches high, that's higher than a gate, which is 54 inches high at the top. So all of this is,
Yeah.
and then, then we've got the red line there that you're dealing with a difficult situation already, and it puts it kind of more out of scale. But that, I don't mean to quibble, but basically I'm having trouble seeing the justification. And if it's to keep the dog in, that doesn't persuade me.
Linda, do you?
I was just going to make a comment in the gates that we have been the gates that we have allowed up in the jewel box area where I am did not get a height exception. Were open to the ground, and so they're still very open, and you still get that neighborhood feel. The pillars and the solid bottom of the wall is going to give a little bit, I think, of a fortress effect. But I can't translate in my head what you just described as the difference in the drawing, because it's quite a bit higher than.
Yeah.
So this is going to be solid for what we would normally have in a gate that's open, and then the additional on top of that.
See, this pillar, and I'm looking at what's up there. That's 48 inches high. And if you drew the line across, it would be above there, but this is actually 54.
So this is going to arch much.
This is going to be high up, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why I thought it was 48 and 18.
Yeah.
Because it was drawn higher than the arch.
Exactly.
I wanted to clarify one thing, and if it was already stated, I apologize, but in terms of being aligned, the top of this fence being aligned with the neighbor's fence, that is aligned at, the neighbor's fence is aligned at 48 inches or at 42 inches? In other words, the pillar or the wall in between the pillars?
I believe that the height of the neighboring fence was not the 42 inches, it was taller, the 48 inches.
Around the 48 inches. Okay, so that pillar is bringing a constant line of sight from the neighbor's fence and down across the front of this property.
Right.
Okay. And I guess my perspective, and I understand, again, I'm relatively new at this process, but it seems that, and you guys must deal with this all the time, the trade-offs between in compliance with the regulations, but then also aesthetic, style, look, and view. And because the applicants could come and put a solid wall, brick wall, that's 42 inches high, and they would have a right to do that. It could just be straight, solid, and nothing attractive about it.
But it couldn't encroach.
And, but isn't that a separate question, though, whether or not it encroaches as...
No, aesthetics are part of the encroachment.
And it's, okay. But then the question would be, did it encroach or not? Okay. But that would be, as long as it didn't encroach, they could put a solid wall across, this property. It wouldn't be particularly attractive. It wouldn't necessarily fit into the neighborhood. Neighbors may not like it. Now, once I noticed about, and the reason I asked the question about the height of the lower part of the gates is that the height encroachment for the gates is relative to just that, creating that peak, creating a line design that maybe goes up. And I guess that's a trade-off that I'm willing to make. If we gain aesthetics from it, maybe the height encroachment is a legitimate trade-off from that perspective. Now, and with the pillars, that's probably, but if that's to be, one, it's not solid across. The main portions of the fence are not within a height exception. And if that is to be aligned with the neighbor's fence, those pillars, for continuity's sake, I think that makes it more attractive. And taking it all as a whole, it seems to me that this is an attractive fence. It functions well for what the applicant's purposes will be. I think it will look good, fit into the neighborhood, fits with the neighbor's fence. And it's a nice-looking fence. It has some good architectural features to it. And I think that's the height it is a trade-off that I think I would be willing to make. So that's just my perspective about it, because otherwise we would not have necessarily attractive structures if we always just force people to, abide by, the strict limitations. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Question for staff. Given that the sketch that we have is just that, it's a sketch, would it be appropriate, or would we need to condition that the solid part of the fence be no more than 30 inches high, and that the upper bound of it be open for transparency purposes?
I think that's a good recommendation, so that this is tied to the fence in perpetuity to ensure that you're doing that trade-off to ensure that that's open and you're not having a fortress in the future. And it should be noted that within the fence chapter, there is no criteria for when you approve, for how to approve of a fence exception. It just says that the Planning Commission may approve. So it is good to make these findings of why, and conditions to ensure that your findings are kept.
Based on that, I would be willing to make a motion that we approve the revocable encroachment permit and the exception, the height exception on the fence as designed in the sketch, and condition the solid part of the gates and between the pillars be no more than 30 inches high.
So I'd like to ask if you would be willing to break that into two motions, one as to the encroachment and one as to the height.
Sure.
So let's take the encroachment part of the motion first. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And now the height motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'm not opposed to that. So that passes and with the conditions as stated. And I want to say a nice job of doing this. I have one suggestion, which is if the neighboring property fence is going to be important to the decision, we should have some kind of depiction of that, or something that we, other than our personal visits, which I didn't really notice it at that time, some kind of neighborhood view or something that helps us in that. Okay. So, next public hearing is the zoning code update.
Okay, thank you, Commission. I hope you had a nice, relaxing end of the year without the zoning code in December. And I thought we'd start off and talk about a few things that we accomplished since 2014, actually, in the zoning code. So in 2014, we had 7 stakeholder meetings towards the end of 2014, and we started into 2015 with 16 issues and options meetings, and those meetings were divided up between the Planning Commission and City Council, where we looked at some of the major issues and what options are out there in terms of the future zoning code. Last year, our first draft was published in February. We held 14 Planning Commission meetings. Many of those were special meetings in which we just solely focused on the zoning code update. We received feedback on the entire code from the Planning Commission, and those edits were brought to the City Council during 7 City Council meetings, and there was a little bit of back and forth in between. So at this point, on January 9th, we released the updated draft zoning code. So the front of the document has a date on it, as well as in your binder the sides, so you can keep them. One will hopefully have less sticky notes than the first one that was published. But within the new draft zoning code, all the Planning Commission edits have been incorporated into the document. So they're no longer a special color, they're in black, and they've been reviewed by the City Council and accepted by the City Council. You'll also notice that there are blue edits. The blue edits are staff edits. So as we went through, there were some numbers that were off. There were just minor, mostly minor edits. And the red edits are the City Council edits. So anything that they looked at your edits and agreed with are in black. Anything that they went through and had other suggestions to tweak are now in red. And I also want to highlight that some of the edits in blue, the Coastal Commission had given us feedback on the draft code, and at one point we brought all of their edits to you and highlighted that there were a number of policy revisions included in their request. We have not included every edit that they have suggested that we've agreed with is definitely not a policy change, but minor tweaks such as referencing the LCP. And so the staff edits are also shown in blue that we concur with the Coastal Commission recommendations. And the majority of those will be found in the coastal chapter, so as well as others when you see references to LCP. So heading into our new zoning code update, there are 9 remaining zoning code issues that we think are important to get feedback on before putting this out for the final public draft review. So we've put together the remaining zoning code issues, and that was attachment 1 to the packet. And this will be the guide for our upcoming public meetings regarding the zoning code. We also created a document, which was your attachment 2, which was the staff revisions to the draft zoning code. And within this list, it just highlights some of the more staff changes that were more numerical or quantitative or qualitative in the draft code that we wanted to highlight to you, because you may ask us to bring those back as discussion items, but unless requested, we just wanted to highlight to you the minor modifications. So I'll I'll give you a brief overview of the topics that will be discussed in the upcoming meetings. The first is the zoning map and the transient rental overlay boundary, which is in the future going to be called the vacation rental boundary. Within the packet, you received an updated zoning map and the subsequent maps that will be published. This evening, I passed out a new large map for you because we did notice there was a discrepancy between the small map that was provided and the large. So this is an updated map that reflects exactly what is online and in circulation with the public.
That map's dated January 18th, right?
It should be, yes. All right. So that will be the first item that we hope to discuss with you. Next is the height exception in the mixed-use village. The height exceptions within the mixed-use village, there were 3 height exceptions proposed at this time, and we think they need further edits to be more clear to the public. There's some habitable area concerns in how we'll grant height exceptions as it's written today, and we have some suggestions on how we think our concerns can be fixed. Next is height exceptions citywide. Within the draft code, it was not clear if the citywide exceptions were in addition to the height exceptions within a specific zone or measured from the zone height, so that's something else we'll be bringing to you for clarification. Land use changes in the regional commercial, there were some tweaks to mixed use in the regional commercial and whether or not a standalone multifamily development is no longer allowed in the regional commercial, and we just wanted to bring that back and ensure that that's the direction that the Planning Commission and City Council would like to go in. Also, within office uses, there's a table on office uses and when they are and are not allowed, and that they would currently prohibit all office use within the regional commercial in the future. And there are some office buildings within the regional commercial, so we want to discuss how those should be handled in the future and maybe having some allowances. The Coastal Commission edits, when we brought those to Planning Commission last, it was all of their edits, including the policy issues. At the end of that hearing, there was not a recommendation on how to move forward with those proposals. So now with the update of taking out the policy issues, we're looking for feedback from the Planning Commission. The City Council did not want to review the Coastal Commission edits when we took it to City Council because they wanted Planning Commission to have reviewed what we saw as the acceptable revisions. Next is setbacks. As we went through the update to the code, and we got into each of the items that how far they should be set back from a property line, there's a lot of variation between what would be allowed for a fire pit versus an outdoor dining area versus a shed. And as we looked at this, we said, there are some, you can kind of group these impacts together and maybe have a standard setback for what types of impacts. So if it's a social setting, such as an outdoor kitchen or a fire pit or a hot tub, maybe that should have a consistent setback from a property line versus the shed, tool shed that isn't so social and could be closer to the property line. So we're going to be bringing that back just to create consistency. Accessory dwelling units, the state has updated the regulations for accessory. It used to be called secondary dwelling units. They've updated the name to accessory dwelling units, and we have a whole new chapter on accessory dwelling units so that it complies with the state regulations. And last is non-conforming structures. There were some tweaks to non-conforming, major changes actually during the update, and the language wasn't that easy to understand. So we've revised that, hopefully making it more user-friendly, and just want to check in and make sure we got it right. So at that point, those are the 9 large topics that we have for your review in the future. And if there are items that you would like us to add to this list, if you want to mention them tonight, that's fine, but I'd also ask planning commissioners to feel free to just send me an email, let me know what you'd like to place on, get on the agenda at some point, and we'll be happy to do so and accommodate that, so.
What do you see as the process then, going forward?
So the process will be, we'll utilize the memo of the remaining topics, and we'll go through them in order, the 9 topics. And then I'll actually give you an overview right now of what future steps
Okay.
are required. So Planning Commission, we're going to complete the review of the pending issues. Then you'll make a recommendation to initiate the public review process. We will take your recommendations to the City Council so they can review the pending issues. And at that point, they'll initiate the public process. At that point, we'll publish the zoning code with all the direction we've been given from both Planning Commission and City Council. We'll update it, publish the zoning code for a 60-day review, public review. That was the direction City Council gave to us at the end of last year. Was they really want to ensure that it's out there for 60 days before adoption. Then it'll come back to the Planning Commission for a recommendation on adoption. So we'll bring, after the 60-day period, we'll place it on a public hearing. We'll have public comment, any suggested revisions the Planning Commission may have, and then we'll incorporate, get a recommendation to the City Council. And then the City Council will also have a public hearing, take a public comment, incorporate in any suggestions that they'd like for revisions, and then adoption. And after that, of course, it goes to coastal.
So let's go to 1. When's that going to happen?
That's going to happen starting in February. So,
Over what period of time?
so that's what we'd like to
Oh,
get
there we go.
feedback.
Everybody wants to know how many extra
Who's
meetings are we
leading
going to
this
have.
presentation? So in February, we're hoping the first special meeting would be February 16th. Our February 2nd agenda is looking light. We've got 2 applications at this point to bring before Planning Commission. So I was hoping that we could put the zoning map as well as the,
Part of the reason I was kind of jumping the gun
Yep.
on this is I probably will not be able to attend that meeting,
okay,
February 2. There's a small chance, but not likely.
okay. So that is, tonight we're looking for feedback on scheduling, and I can also send out an email because since we have 2 commissioners absent this evening. But upcoming schedule is, the council is council chambers are available to us on the 3rd Thursday of each month. So special meetings could take place on February 16th, March 16th, and March 30th as well, because there's 5 Thursdays in March. So with that's the upcoming schedule, and I'd love to hear your feedback on how you would like this scheduled and how many meetings do you think we'll need to schedule in order to get through the remaining items, and if there are other major items that you'd like to add to the list at this point or in the future. So with that, I'll turn the conversation over to you.
Thoughts?
Yeah, thoughts on that particular, about this schedule. I was wondering how that fits in with the other 1 through 7 schedule of reviews to the City Council, public reviews. When's your anticipated time to do that whole list?
The whole list,
The list, despite the fact there's 9 items on there, I'm hopeful, a lot of it will go pretty quickly. I think there's a couple issues we'll have to dig into a little bit. They were head scratchers for staff, so, but a lot of them I think will be pretty straightforward. The unknown is how many more issues might the commission or council want to add to the list. And I'm sure we'll have some, and that's an unknown at this point.
How do you want to handle the more minor issues, for example, I came up with a couple that are included in the staff notes in here because I tried to read a lot of that. And there's one, as an example, active and passive recreational facilities come up in, and I forget what it was.
the coastal.
Okay, so understanding that in substantial benefits, we have listed recreational amenities, and really having a chance, we didn't discuss that at all when we were going through it the first time. So is that something that we would want to just have a discussion on, or how do we get an explanation for that kind of stuff?
You know, I think whether it be contacting Katie offline, and then we'll announce it at a public hearing,
Okay.
so that we comply with the Brown Act, and that we have additional items for discussion at the request of a commissioner, we can do it that way. And then certainly, if you know of it at a public hearing, ask us about it. If we can't handle it at that moment, we'll schedule it for a future meeting and do some homework.
So in this draft that we're looking at now, the blue items include coastal commission and staff changes. There's not a way to figure out which are which.
I think most of it's going to be pretty intuitive. If it's talking, including a coastal permit is required, because
Well, right.
they like to write that everywhere.
But active and passive recreational facilities doesn't jump out and tell me
Yeah.
it's kind of a coastal thing.
No.
Yeah, I think most of them will be pretty self-evident. There's probably a few that aren't, and if you do have questions, let us know, and we'll help decipher that. We didn't want to make it a rainbow document either, and
Yeah.
so that was kind of why we went with 2 documents.
Okay, so let's go back to the PC calendar.
And so the feedback I'm looking for is for just step 1,
Right, let's go
right,
back
within
there.
the calendar.
If we have a special I'm fine with the February 2nd meeting dealing with the zoning map and the VR overlay in my absence. I think some of the other commissioners are probably more keyed into that. Then the February 16th special meeting, we need to find out if everyone can make that. But if that's a special meeting and we don't have anything else on the agenda, I think we should be able to accomplish a lot. Maybe 9 points on that.
That's the hope. Yeah. And, once, we can always at that point decide, well, what kind of progress did we make? How many more meetings are we going to need? By then, I expect that you'll have a better idea if there's other things that you want to talk about. So we'll be able to define it a little better, hopefully.
And I think that's where we should leave it tonight, because then we'll have more commissioners available on the 16th, and we see where we are. You decide on we can keep those, let's keep those dates available. How's that sound?
Great.
That's a good plan, yeah.
And you may have mentioned it, and I may have just bleeped it, the March 2nd meeting, you don't really have visibility yet to know how big that regular meeting is going to be, do you? Is it possible we could add some special meeting to that night?
As of right now, it looks like it's filling up pretty quick, so we've got quite a number of applications that came in the new year, so.
And the special meetings will start at 6?
That's the commission's pleasure. We would suggest that, but we're flexible.
Very good.
Yeah, we've spent a lot of time on these issues, and although there are new wrinkles, obviously, that have come up, I think we should be able to get through a lot of these issues, I would think.
And there aren't any plans to have any joint meetings between Planning Commission and the council at this point?
There's none at this point. I've always envisioned that when we get near the end of the process, if there are some issues where the Planning Commission and City Council just have strong disagreements, that might be a good time to pull everyone together and work it out. Ideally, we're mostly on the same page. And I think by and large, the Commission and Council has been, so.
Parklets, yeah.
Yeah, there's been exceptions. But parklets are not in the code. It's a trial program and a city administrative policy, so.
But in here, the red is city council changes, and except for in the very last section of what we're going to talk, the staff changes, and those staff changes were in red, right?
Blue.
Blue.
Do we have that list of the 9 issues somewhere?
Yes, they're in attachment A, so, and it cuts and pastes from the new code, so everything should be up to date in that.
You said A?
Yep, or attachment 1,
1, okay.
so it says remaining zoning code issues, yes.
Page 29 through 51.
I'll tell you, you guys really have great tenacity. Staff.
I do have to say that when I first got the zoning code, I really tried to read through the whole thing, and you guys made it really easy to do. So I really appreciate the blue and the red, because you can sort of go there and look, and I've heard we don't get a second bite at the apple. You know, if the council's already said this is the way it is, unless we strongly, vehemently disagree, it's kind of a done deal. So that was really nice to be able to find those easily.
Great.
Okay, does that conclude that
That concludes my
item?
presentation. Yeah.
Very good. That takes us to the director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few items. The California League of Cities has announced their annual Planning Commissioners Academy. It's going to be held this year between March 1st and March 3rd in Los Angeles. If any of you are interested, let me know. We've got a little information packet here, and the city could comp at least a good portion of that trip if it's something that interests you. A couple items at City Council. We did present our wireless ordinance update at the last City Council meeting. The council did continue that item till this upcoming Thursday because they were interested to see what the City of Monterey did based on the testimony of a public speaker. So we'll be bringing that back this upcoming week. And also, as I think you're all aware, the application at 105 Sacramento that you all approved last year was appealed. That item was supposed to be heard last week. Unfortunately, we made a clerical error with the noticing, had to continue, and that will also be on the council's agenda for next week. And that concludes my director's report this evening. Thank you.
Okay, commission communications.
I'm glad to be here.
Yes, thank you. And I would just like to echo what we heard at the last meeting last year, which is to commend the former chairman for the excellent job that he did as chairman, and it's going to be big shoes to fill, I'm afraid. And with that, we will adjourn. New regime here, I don't think I need a motion to adjourn. Yeah.
You dictator in town.
So